ground where warriors collide. Die Hard MMA podcast, we won't hide. Clint's gonna dig deep, analyze each brawl from the underdogs to the champions standing tall. The fury, let your instincts rise. Feel the adrenaline rush, it's time to defy. Die Hard MMA, we're ready for the thrill. Get ready for the madness. Let's make that bankroll spill.
Happy Friday, degenerates, and welcome back to the Undefeated Post-Wagon Show. I'm so ready for this one. I cannot wait. First and foremost, make sure y'all are setting your alarm clocks. These fights kick off first thing in the morning. I forgot to mention that for you on my last couple of shows. Don't get caught sleeping. If you wake up in the morning and you grab yourself either a coffee or an energy drink or a Bloody Mary, we don't judge, and you're like pumping in your bets in the morning instead of getting them in on Saturday nights, don't do that this week. Make sure your card is finalized and locked in tonight, because by the time you roll out of bed, when you start smelling that bacon waft over towards you, yeah, the fights are already on. So just be prepared. I hope everybody is doing great today. It's an amazing Friday, and I cannot wait to have some early morning MMA action for us to bet on and hopefully get my ass back on track here for this year. This is the Undefeated Post Weigh-In Show. This is the home of fight. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the like button for me if you haven't yet. And if it's your first time on this show, what I do is take everything we've learned from the beginning of the week, handicapping the fights, researching everything throughout the week, watching them on the scales today, talking with the homies, and then we put it all together here and I give you all the information we've got so that you can make some profitable betting decisions for Saturday. And of course, we call it Undefeated for a reason. Never a bad read, never a bad bet. 100, 1,000, 1,000,000% hit rate on this show. Only this show. Best damn betting show of the week. Make sure you guys are tuned in. Let's get started. So a couple things have happened. I mean, just right off the bat, we need to switch hats here, guys. A couple things have happened already on this fight card. Most notably, in my opinion, second most notably, actually, we'll get to the other one later. They've swapped the order of this card, okay? Everything has been completely shuffled around from what we talked about earlier in the week. Things are very, very different. The layout of UFC 308 coming into tomorrow. The first fight of the evening now is Renat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. Now, I love this decision. I think this fight is absolutely going to be a banger. We talked about it, right? Renat Fakhretdinov likes to come out, foot on the gas pedal, runs his opponents over, and then he just doesn't have a whole lot of gas left in the tank if he doesn't quite get that finish. And that has caused him a problem in his couple of fights recently. He's really been kind of exposed as far as not being able to keep it together down the stretch here. Carlos Leal coming from the PFL. You guys should have seen this guy on the stage today. I hope you watched the video clip. First and foremost, oh my God, this guy has so much muscle on his frame. It is ridiculous. And on top of that, he's got all the back knee you could ask for. If you guys remember, rewind 2, 3, 4 weeks when I got absolutely hosed by the officials with the cheating the glove grab for Jacqueline Amarin. We have made a pledge. We will never again complain about fighters cheating. I'm not going to complain about Towelgate. I'm not going to complain about grabbing the gloves or the fence. I'm not going to complain about steroids. We're just going to bet on the cheaters. And I am very tempted to bet on Carlos Leal in this spot. First off, I think he's got a very, very real chance of just being able to do exactly what we've seen the last couple of fights against Renat Fakhretdinov. I think he's got a very real possibility of being able to replicate surviving the wrestling early and then taking over the deeper the fight goes and then exposing this man when he runs out of gas, because that's exactly what's happened to him. Carlos Leal is a very good wrestler. He's got a very good get-up game. He's very strong, and he's got a good gas tank. And I know it says he's coming in here on short notice, but he's really not. He actually had a fight scheduled already. Not for this exact weekend, but he had a fight coming up. So it's a spot where I actually think that he was prepared. He was ready for a fight. So he should be good to go on this one. And let me just shout out my guy, Sparring with Reality Betting, guys. If you missed the picture, my God, like, look at this man. I don't think whoever is doing the UFC's drug testing these days is on their game. They signed this man on short notice overseas and said, forget about it. We're not worried about it. And they're letting him compete looking like that. Yeah, that guy is an underdog, and we have seen the favorite get exposed on multiple occasions with his cardio and his gas tank. I will probably take the 2-1 shot on Carlos Leal Miranda. These guys size up pretty well. I mean, Renat Fakhretdinov is a little bit taller. He does have a slight height advantage here, but when you're looking at the frame, the torso, the shoulders, like the muscle, all of that goes to Carlos Leal, and he is not a small man. It's not like huge height difference for Renat Fakhretdinov. It's not like my guy Carlos Leal is tiny or anything like that. So I'm definitely thinking live dog barking, and I think we have to take the round prop shots, right? We got to look at round 2, round 3, because Renat Fakhretdinov just does not have any technique on the feet, and he falls completely apart when he's gassed and he's tired, and he is desperate to keep opponents away from him once he's in that condition. I don't think he's going to be able to scare off a guy like Leal. Leal's going to step on the gas, and he's going to come forward and try and hurt this kid as soon as he realizes that he's running low on the gas tank. So I kind of like Carlos Leal on the money line, and I wouldn't be shocked at all at a round 2 or a round 3 finish. 14-1 round 2, 18-1 round 3. And then if we're looking at getting crazy with like the round method prop bets types of thing, KO TKO round 2 is 16. KO TKO round 3 is 22-1. I don't think he's submitting Renat Fakhretdinov. That's just me. I'm not sure Leal is going to be looking for chokes. And frankly, when you get these grapplers, even when they get tired, they tend to know how to survive those situations. Leal's got 10 knockouts on his record versus only 2 submissions. And he does have a lot of decisions. So I actually think decision is more than on the table in this one, which is why I would look towards the money line if you're going to bet this one rather than, getting too invested in a prop. But just because of the gas tank situation, I think we've got to sprinkle the round 3. Everybody rolling in here. We've got over 200 live viewers already. What's going on, everybody? Glad to hear you guys are here and hanging out. All right. Seeing everybody in here. Yeah, Chris Wilson, tinfoil hat time. That's what's up. All right. So the second fight of the evening here at UFC 308, Bruno Silva, Ismail Nardiev, 185 for Nardiev, 186 for Bruno Silva. Nardiev looked puffy. Right? He's usually fighting at 170-ish pounds. Frankly, after he got cut from the UFC, he has only made 170 like once. The rest of the time, he has been catch weighting at 175 and stuff like that. He is not a big man. I don't think he's destined for 185 pounds, frankly. I think he's a natural 170er, and unless he just really like muscles up, he's not going to do well at 185 pounds in the UFC if he sticks around, that is. Bruno Silva, classic Bruno, except the one tell with Bruno Silva, like all of this stuff comes down with Bruno. He's a guy that can fight with the elite when he's on point. And you can always tell when Bruno's on point because of his abs. Because if he's not showing up really looking to like come in here and compete, he's got a soft belly. When this man has like cuts between his abs, when you can see the 4 or the 6-pack, that's when you know Bruno Silva took the fight seriously. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, Bruno Silva's got abs today. This man took this fight seriously. Ismail Nardiev, I don't think he's got the grappling chops that it's going to take to hold down Bruno Silva for 15 minutes. Frankly, I just don't. These size up very, very well. Bruno does have a slight size advantage, which is not something he's used to. He's usually on the smaller end of the 185 spectrum, and Nardiev pissed him off. He went in forehead to forehead at this face-off. It got intense. And if Nardiev's going to be bringing that kind of energy, you can count on Bruno Silva to match it. I mean, you look back at some of the losses Bruno had in the UFC, the Gerald Meerschaert one stands out. He was winning that fight. And then he fell victim to the classic GM3 round 3 submission. And there's not a damn thing you can do about that. Like, if you're tired and don't have just top tier wrestling or submission defense, GM3 is going to get you. He's going to do that to you. He's done it to a lot of people. Nardiev ain't that guy. Nardiev trains like Wonder Boy. He wants to be flashy and kick and footwork and stay on the outside. And he's been sparked in the first round several times. This is a step down in competition for Silva. Silva showed up looking like he's serious about this fight, and he's the underdog. He opened up the favorite. Money has come in on Ismail Nardiev. And frankly, guys, I don't have much problem standing in front of this move here. I think it's going to be Bruno Silva. I'm probably going to end up pulling the trigger and having a bet on him. And I like that KO prop. It's like plus 330 right now, plus 300 for Bruno Silva by knockout. Now, there's a chance this fight goes long. There's a chance we end up with, a wrestling type of situation here. Nardiev's got to want to look for the takedowns in this spot. You got to think that's probably part of the game plan. But I just don't think he's good enough. That's all it comes down to. I don't think he's a good enough grappler to take advantage of that grappling. And if he does, I think he's going to wear himself out. And there's a chance he ends up underneath Bruno Silva. And what have I told you guys about Bruno Silva since day one? The king of ground and pound. If this man gets on top of you in a dominant position, he trains ground and pound specifically. That's his best method of finishing anybody. So if he gets on top of Ismail Nardiev, this bad boy's all over, and the ref will pull him off. And, with the gloves and all that kind of shit these days, we worry about like the one-hitter quitter type KOs on the feet. TKOs, different story. You can pull off a TKO in this league. So, I like the dog here. I like Bruno Silva. And that's back-to-back to open up the card here, guys. I like a shot on Carlos Leal Miranda. I think the light is just way too wide. He might be a better live bet. I'll tell you guys that if we can backtrack for just a second. But Bruno Silva, straight up, I like the money line, and I think he could win this thing by round 1 KO. So that's not one that I'm, like, nervous about waiting for to see how he does. Like, no, I want Bruno Silva. Next fight on the docket here, Farid Basharat and Victor Hugo. We got to switch hats, guys. This is where shit starts to get weird. I mean, they already adjusted the card, but this one is really weird. So this fight is scheduled for 135 pounds, right? Farid Basharat and Victor Hugo. This morning, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this fight is scheduled for 145 pounds. And I'm going, wait a second. Farid Basharat weighs in at 135 pounds. And his opponent, Victor Hugo, comes in at 145. So the official mark for Farid is 137. And frankly, guys, he looked distressed on the scales today. He cuts a lot of weight. He was very sucked out. He was making lots of nervous motions, like his hands clenching, squeezing, doing this kind of thing. Like, I really think Farid Basharat had a really tough weight cut. And he was really having a hard time on the scales today. Victor Hugo, on the other hand, cool as a cucumber. Calm, relaxed, comfortable, just kind of stood up there, didn't have a care in the world. This man completely blew weight by 10 pounds. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if he's got some sort of injury that he couldn't do cardio, because usually when a situation like this happens, they at least make it down to like the 2.5 or the 3 pound mark so that the commission will allow the fight to continue. This guy was nowhere near being able to make 135 pounds. So they moved the entire fight up a weight class just to keep it on the board. Crazy. That's not something we see very often. Victor Hugo is going to have a massive weight advantage, and he's already far more refueled than Farid Basharat is coming into this thing. Farid is very tall, and again, he was making lots of weird motions and weird movements, and Victor Hugo just kind of death stared him down. So very, very interesting stuff going on here on this one. Farid Basharat is a minus 750 favorite, which frankly, guys, I didn't want a chunk of that when I thought they were going to both make weight. I'm picking Farid Basharat to win this fight. I really am. I think he's probably going to end up winning a decision. Maybe Victor Hugo gasses out and he can get like a round 3 sub, a barn burner type of situation where he gets it after he's exhausted, that kind of thing. Victor Hugo brings it. And that's kind of the one thing that is a bit of a question mark for me here on this fight. This guy is a finisher. Whether it's by sub, whether it's by KO, Victor Hugo comes out guns blazing and looks for the finish. Now that he's got all this extra weight on him, he could have a very significant strength advantage. His cardio could be a whole lot better than it should have been, and that gives him a big edge in this fight that he didn't have the first time. Now, maybe Farid Basharat is still just that much better than him, just that much more technical than him, and he's able to overcome this difference. But I felt like it was a sketchy fight to be laying minus 600 on in the first place. Now, I ain't going anywhere near it. You couldn't get me to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole if I was going to be talking about a Farid Basharat bet, because there's too many question marks for me. I want to watch this thing live. I don't hate like an inside the distance type of shot on a Victor Hugo or something like that, just because the numbers are absolutely insane. Hugo KO is 18-1. Hugo sub is 35-1. My God. See, I didn't even look at that before. I can't believe Hugo sub is 35-1. That's this guy's like main method of victory. He's got 9 victories by sub. He's got ankle locks and knee bars and all kinds of stuff. I know Farid Basharat's never been finished, but my God, guys, a 27-year-old fighter, you don't think he can get caught when his opponent is clearly cheating and up a weight class? Maybe we sprinkle. Looking at it right now, maybe we sprinkle. But I mean, at the end of the day, the pick is Farid Basharat by decision. He probably tries to nullify Victor as much as possible, and this thing kind of grinds its way out to a decision victory. That's what I'm expecting, but I can't touch that. Farid Basharat by decision is like minus 175. So if you want to lay damn near 2-1 on a decision prop, more power to you. All right, guys. Next up, we've got Kennedy Nzechukwu. Nzechukwu takes on Chris Barnett. Beast Boy. 264 on the scales today for Beast Boy. 241 for Kennedy. Now, my boy Beast Boy, he was all smiles on the scales today. I'm so happy to see this guy back. I'm just glad he's getting in there to compete. I can't wait for this guy. Way too short to be a heavyweight, still very fat, but he looks like he lost some size. I will say, I think he was a little more flabby, which is interesting with fat people. They kind of swell until their body can't take it anymore, right? And then when they lose weight, they're really flabby, like the flap of the skin, right? You can tell that's where they've lost size. And that's kind of what he looked like to me up there a little bit. He looked a little bit more floppy. So it seems like he's got a little less mass on him, even though he still tips out at 264 pounds at the very top end of the scales here. Kennedy Nzechukwu, man, this guy looks puffy. He is not built for heavyweight. I mean, he came in at 241, so he cuts a lot to get down to 205, but geez, he does not look the same up at heavyweight, man. I'm used to seeing him all shredded up with abs and stuff like that. I'm not sure I'm a fan of heavyweight Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Both guys were having fun at the face-offs, obviously very respectful. How can you hate a guy like Chris Barnett? It is what it is. Kennedy at minus 800, no thank you. Yep. Not a chance. This guy just lost a split decision to OSP. Need I remind you? The reality is Chris Barnett may not be able to close the distance on Kennedy, especially at heavyweight. It's entirely possible. He just can't get past the jab. He just can't get past the knees. He just can't get past the kicks. And he just kind of gets eaten up trying to close the distance on this guy. Very, very real possibility that that's what happens. But if he does, Kennedy's fragile. Kennedy has no chin. He's got no durability. To quote my guy, MMA Uncle Weezy, the spinning fat kick from Chris Barnett is absolutely on the table. And I'll tell you guys, my boy Matty Betts, he is all in on Chris Barnett inside the distance here on this one. You can get Chris Barnett by KO at 10-1. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that sounds like sprinkle worthy because you're getting a guy who can get his foot 2 feet above his head somehow. He's only 5'3", but he can get his foot up to like 5'8", and he's taking on a man who has no durability whatsoever and just lost to OSP, who's going to be retired and cooked absolutely the next time we hear from him. I don't hate the stab on Chris Barnett, but I think more than likely what's going to happen is Kennedy beats him to a pulp at range, and then Chris is either going to rush in for a takedown and catch a knee, or Kennedy might zip up that front choke. So at plus 550, I think Kennedy by submission is an interesting way to turn a minus 800 favorite into a nice plus money shot, because he does have those long, lanky arms. And when you've got a guy shooting in on your hips, it's easy to wrap up the neck, even though Chris doesn't have much of a neck. You got long, skinny arms on Kennedy and Nzechukwu's side. So I do think that's possible. I'm going to pick Kennedy to win this fight. It's going to make me sad, because I think he's going to beat the brakes off of Chris Barnett, and there's not much the little guy will be able to do about it. But you guys know how happy I will be for Chris Barnett to win this fight. This is one where I'm not betting it because my heart's involved. Like, I want to see Chris win. I want another front flip. I want him walking out of that stadium slamming beers again. So I can't bet against him in this spot. And frankly, the line has made it disgusting. I don't want to get anywhere near that line anyway. Bruno Ferreira, takes on Abus Magomedov. 185.5 for Bruno, 185 on the dot for Abus. You know, Bruno is a thick little tank of a man. Abus looked a little bit sucked out on the scales, but he always does. He is in incredible shape. He's built extremely well. Huge flex up there. This was a very intense face-off. Abus Magomedov has the height and the reach advantage, as you would expect. Bruno is the fan favorite here on this one. This man is cashed as an underdog several times, and he just nukes people early in the first round. Abus, I think, has a lot, if not all, of the advantages in this fight, except for maybe raw power. And he's also got plenty of that of his own. So it's funny, guys. I was kicking around the idea of adding Abus Magomedov as a play on this one because I think we will make money long-term just blindly fading Bruno Ferreira. I don't think he's all that, frankly. I mean, his win over Phil Hawes, it was like, man, which guy do I fade? I want to fade them both. So that's kind of how I feel about the guy. And I've been a little higher than most on Abus Magomedov, with him having all the advantages, the height, the reach, the wrestling, everything being in his backyard, technically speaking, for this fight. That's the guy that I want to be on, and I've been this close to pulling the trigger. You guys know Narco Cop from the Lambo podcast, Lambo Plays podcast, and I love the guy, one of the sharpest guys in the game. He gave out Abus as his free play of the week, and I was like, oh no, like Narco, he just made it impossible, because if I now bet Abus and he loses, I'm mushing Narco's free play of the week. I can't, I in good conscience, like, I'm so torn. I don't want to do that to Narco because he's giving out a free play for people, but I could come along and just ruin the whole thing. So I'm trying to decide if I want to plug my nose and take the shot. And sorry for all you suckers who are also betting Abus Magomedov. The mush of the week is going to end up just, piling on in, but that's the side I'm on. I haven't bet it yet, but I'm probably going to. I lean towards Abus. I like him in this spot. I'm not a huge fan of Bruno. I don't think Bruno's got the cardio or the well-rounded skill set to be able to take out Abus, even if this fight does go a little bit deep. And I think Abus can control the pace of the fight, something he couldn't do versus Sean Strickland. And that's going to really kind of be the key to his victory here in this spot. Next up, you've got Mikdek Orolbai and Matos Rumbecki. We got to switch hats again, guys. We got to switch hats again. This is another one that went from being 155 pounds to being a 160-pound catch weight all of a sudden this morning. I don't know what happened, and I haven't been able to confirm which side of the deal this came on, but Matos Rumbecki comes in right at 160 on the dot, whereas Mikdek Orolbai made 159. So my gut tells me that Orolbai was going to be able to make 155 pounds, and Rumbecki wasn't. And when they got the call, he was like, yeah, why bother cutting all the extra weight? I'm good. Let's do 160. That sounds like fun to me, right? Like, that just seems like something that would happen here. So I've got a suspicion that Rumbecki was not able to make 155 pounds. This dude always does the the squint flex. Good times for Matos Rumbecki. And Orolbai does have a height advantage here in this spot. This was a very respectful face off. You guys know I'm probably one of the highest people on Mikdek Orolbai. I absolutely love Orolbai. I think he's a sleeping giant in this weight class. And frankly, I've always felt like Matos Rumbecki is a little bit of a fraud. Like, I know the guy is extremely aggressive and he comes forward looking for blood and he swings and he's got good wrestling and he's got incredible pace, but he's a good hammer and he's not a great nail. Like, if he cannot just blow you over, then he ends up kind of falling apart. It's a lot like the Dinov situation, where he just kind of can't keep that pedal to the metal if you're swinging back. Against a punching bag, if he can take you down and wash you, then it's no problem. But as soon as you start pushing back, he starts taking the back foot. He starts stepping back. He starts letting you lead the dance. He can't quite get it going the way he wants to. It's not the same game. And I really feel like Mikdek Orolbai is going to be the guy who can pause his forward momentum. This guy has got incredible wrestling. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's good in scrambles. He's got very good technical boxing, and he's got power. I think he'll be able to play a little bit of the matador on the feet. And as Rumbecki charges in forward, Orolbai is going to be able to counter him. I mean, if you go back and watch his regional tape, I always talk about the uppercut that he's landed. It's on his highlight reel. If you see this guy, he just like perfectly times this uppercut with his opponent coming in, and he's dead. I mean, like, they're raising Orolbai's hand and like proclaiming him the winner. The guy's still out cold on the mat behind him. Like, it took forever for the guy to wake up. He's got power. So it might end up being Orolbai by decision, but I really feel like the crazy hat theory comes into play here, where if you've got someone who's got something weird on their head in an MMA fight, that's the side you want to be on. So I will be on Mikdek Orolbai. He's the first leg of my big parlay here for this weekend. I like him a lot. And especially if Recki isn't able to make the 155-pound limit. Again, I can't confirm that, but for my brain, I feel like that's an edge for Oralby if his opponent isn't doing what it takes to cut down the weight the way he needs to. I kind of feel like that's a mental edge and potentially a cardio edge for my guy just because the other guy wasn't able to get there. So I'm going to justify it that way. That's what I'm going to tell myself. Rafael Dos Anjos takes on Jeff Neal in the next fight. 171 pounds for both men. Rafael Dos Anjos just never quits, man. This guy is just the aging Brazilian champion that never goes away. He's going to personally defeat Father Time. He'll be the first one to ever do it. He looks absolutely incredible. Jeff Neal, 171, absolutely shredded up there. He's in great shape as well, looking very solid. This was a really good face-off. And it's interesting because this whole week I've kind of built up in my head, RDA back up at 170. That's not where I want him, especially in the twilight of his career. I don't want him fighting these monsters up at 170 pounds. Now, I have talked myself into betting him his last couple of fights because he's always in every single fight. He's one of the best fighters on planet Earth, but I can't get there at 170. And I'm thinking Neal's just going to be huge. Neal's going to be so much bigger than this guy. He's not that much bigger. RDA is a big man. This was a really good face-off. Neal is larger, but not as much as I expected him to be. I can't trust Jeff Neal, you guys. That's always kind of been my problem. He zigs when I zag. If I bet on him, he loses. If I bet against him, he wins. He looks like $1 million sometimes. He shows up and he's got godlike power. And then other times he just stands back and he runs around the cage and lets you do whatever the hell you feel like and loses a split decision. I don't know what to make of this guy. I think he's a bit of a head case. And in this spot, I want nothing to do with it. Jeff Neal is a minus 300 favorite. You can get plus 250 on Rafael Dos Anjos. We talked about the over-under with my guy, Andrew, on the Sharp Action report. He told us that Sharp Action came in on the over 2.5 here in this spot, which I think makes sense. I actually thought about like the split decision prop in this one. Taking a flyer on RDA by decision at plus 400, I think is better than his money line because I don't see him winning inside the distance against a guy like Jeff Neal. I do think this is going to be a slog. I do think it'll be a grind. Neal does have the power to knock out a guy like RDA. It's totally possible, but if RDA gets the grappling going and just kind of grinds Neal up against the fence, this could be a very close fight compared to what the line suggests. So not one that I'm interested in betting. Again, I really do think it more than likely is Neal by decision, but I definitely don't want to put my money on that. So we'll say Jeff Neal wins, and we'll go ahead and take a pass on it. The next fight up, we have... Okay, this is where it gets weird again. Sorry, there's a lot of fights on this card, guys. Ibo Aslan takes on Rafael Quinceañera. And they were like the first or second fight of the night when we talked about this card on Monday, guys. Now, night before the event, all of a sudden, these guys are closing out the prelims. And what have we always said about the last fight on the prelims? It sells the pay-per-view. If you're watching the free prelims and you're on the fence and I don't really want to pull that money out of my wallet and I'm not sure I'm going to watch the pay-per-view, and you see an absolute banger of a fight, somebody gets their head sent into the third row, you're like, you know what? I need more violence in my life. I'm going to buy the pay-per-view. They put this fight in that honorable spot. And it's funny because you get fighters who like complain about being on the prelims instead of being on the main card and stuff like that, veterans of the sport. In my opinion, it goes main event, co-main event, prelim finale, pay-per-view opener. That's the order. That if you're in the close of the prelims, it's actually more important than being in most of the other spots on this card. I know you want to be higher up the card, and it feels like if you're towards the end of the night, you're somehow elevated. But the reality is you're the breadwinner if you're closing out that free card. So I think this is a big jump up because they are expecting fireworks in this fight. Ibo Aslan made 205 pounds. You've got Rafael coming in at 203. Ibo Aslan is a very, very thick man. He's grown a nice fat beard on him, looking good up there, but he does look a little soft. I'll be honest with you. He's not the most shredded guy we've ever seen up there with this kind of a build, right? Rafael, on the other hand, abs for days. Looked absolutely fantastic on the scales today. I kind of couldn't believe it. He looks like a completely different human being. And when they face off, Rafael is huge. Like, he's tall and he's lanky, so Ibo Aslan's got a little bit of like a thickness to him, but Rafael is massive. He's training with Jailton Almeida, so you got to think he's got some grappling in his back pocket, even though we're not entirely certain of that being the case. His striking is very good. His footwork is good. He flows around. He's going to be in the big cage out there against a lumbering beast who just wants to come forward and wing hooks. You know, it's funny because earlier in the week, I thought maybe I kind of leaned towards Ibo catching him at some point, but at the same time, not really interested in betting it. And now at the end of the week, I'm going, I feel like I really missed who Rafael was, and especially now seeing the height and the reach difference, the undefeated record, how badly Ibo struggled in his UFC debut against the guy who already beat him and is getting cut from the organization. I feel like this is kind of a spotlight spot for Rafael all of a sudden. I feel like he might be the reason this fight got moved to where it is. And I think that's the side I want to be on. I know it's a little bit of a blind dart because we haven't seen him tested at this level. And I just don't think much of Ibo. So it doesn't take a whole lot to talk me into this guy. And the steam coming in, pushing him from being like a newcoming small dog towards being a slight favorite, and the bookies being okay with that move and settling him in as a short favorite. I feel like that's telling as far as the betting line goes. So I think I like the Rafael side of things here. And on top of that, again, you have to kind of blindly have faith that this guy training with Jailton Almeida is something. I don't think he's knocking out Ibo Aslan. Now, Aslan's never been finished. We've seen his face wilted up. We've seen him hurt. We've seen him, take a bunch of shots and stuff like that. He's got absolutely no defense, none whatsoever. But I actually think the sub is probably the way to look with Rafael. Again, you got to expect training with a guy like Jailton. He's probably got that in his back pocket. You get these big, tough, juiced up muscle monsters. How do you knock these guys out? Their necks are twice as thick as mine. Like, it's not happening. They've got too much protection there. But you can make them tap. If they get tired and you get on top of them, that's what we did in our last fight, right? Jocelyn Edwards, thank you, ma'am. Tired fighters tap. I would kind of look towards the sub prop at 6-1. And if you want those crazy flyers, man, sub 2, sub 3, 20-1, 28-1 for Rafael. I think that's maybe the way to go if you're looking for some degeneracy here on this fight. And I might end up on the money line here on that one. All right. And you guys are just, why you got to be talking about the Puka Nakua and they tried to kill my man Sam Darnold. They tried to snap his head off and take it home. Like, you guys are killing me. I'm all excited about UFC on a Friday, and you guys are making me relive my demons from Thursday night football. Thanks for that. Shara Magomedov takes on Arman Petrosian, 185 pounds for Shara Bullet, 186 for my man Arman. No problem for Shara. He looks really good. Really, really swole up there. Abs all day. Shelf, chest, muscly, looking fantastic. Arman Petrosian looked a little bit rough on the scales today, you guys. I will tell you that. Like, I'm always going to give it to you straight. I'm not going to be biased. I have a bet on Arman Petrosian, but he definitely looked rough. He always has a bit of a rough cut, though, because he's a big guy. So I don't think it's going to affect him. These two size up really, really well. Arman is slightly taller than Shara is in this spot. Both guys looking extremely confident at this face-off. I am loving every second of it. Arman is our dog of the week. Arman is our Link Memorial Dog of the Week. Frankly, Shara is a striker and nothing else, and he's a kicker more than anything. Arman is such a good crowd the kicker type of boxer. We've seen it in his entire UFC run that's what he does. I think he's going to make it hard for Shara to operate in there when they're on the feet. And then, frankly, I think he's got a wrestling advantage. We know Shara has absolutely no grappling whatsoever, and every time he's been in the cage, he's been the biggest cheater as far as cage grabbing. And I know we're not complaining about that. I'm just saying it's a thing. It's a fact. He gets taken down and they do not put him on the floor. They let him grab the fence to keep himself on the feet. Well, Arman is training at a good camp with lots of grapplers, and he uses that kind of in reverse to work his way back up because he doesn't have great takedown defense himself, but he knows how to stand up. The thing is, he's always working on the grappling. So I think he's got some grappling chops where he's got a bit of an advantage there over Shara. Frankly, I think he can win this fight on the feet, though. So I'm not convinced he has to grapple to win it. I think he can actually crowd and outstrike Shara the way nobody's been able to at this point. I love this fight. As soon as they booked it, I was like, oh, they gave me a chance. Like, they're giving Shara winnable fights all the way along, and then they booked this one, and I'm like, everyone's underestimating my boy Arman Petrosian in this spot. I can't wait. So I've got Arman Petrosian. He is my dog of the week. We might get robbed on the judges' scorecards when this thing goes all 15 in a competitive kickboxing match. Very possible. But I like our chances here. I think Arman's got to be the side because Shera just has not ever covered a number in the UFC. And some of the worst guys on the roster who have now been cut from the roster gave him fits. So I expect Arman to go out there and give him a real fight, and we'll see what happens. Dan Ige takes on Lerone Murphy. 146 for Ige, 145.5 for Lerone. Dan Ige is intense as ever. I love this guy's intensity. I love his attitude. I love his work. I love his ethic. And his abs, guys, are cut up. I mean, like similar to Bruno, I'm talking about, you can tell this guy took it seriously based on the cut of his abs. My God, Dan Ige did nothing but crunches this entire fight camp. Lerone Murphy, on the other hand, is the most shredded human being I've ever seen in my life. I cannot believe this guy makes this weight class. It is insane with the amount of muscle he has on his frame. This number's coming down. I'm not shocked, but it's interesting because Lerone Murphy has such a clear and obvious grappling opportunity in this fight. That's kind of been the Achilles heel of Dan Ige, is people being able to take him down and top time him and take his back and, all that kind of stuff. Lerone Murphy is a 3-1 favorite. Now he's sitting about -270. Dan Ige +220. This is an interesting time where I think you could probably take the spread on Dan Ige, the +3.5, which I know not everybody offers that number, so I apologize if you don't get those type of props, but that's the judges' scorecards, right? So if you get a 29-28 for Murphy, that one round on all three judges' scorecards, those are the 3 points that you're getting for that +3.5. So you can lose a 29-28 or lose a split decision, and Dan Ige will cash the +3.5 ticket for you. I think that's probably a decent bet in this fight because even with Lerone Murphy probably winning it, I think Dan Ige is always good enough to win a round. Like, this guy competes with everybody. He's always in the top 10 because you can't get him out of there. You can't finish him. You can't make him go away. He hits hard. He's got wonderful technical boxing. He's always coming forward. Like, it's hard to look good against Dan Ige. And especially these days, they're not really loving the grapplers. I know we're in a country for this weekend where the grappling may be more appreciated than some of the United States-based fighters, but if Dan Ige is doing damage, whereas Lerone Murphy is getting control time, you may see a swing round in there. I think the +3.5 probably hits. +220 on the money line for Dan Ige, I think, is just always live. He's one of these guys you can never count out. And Lerone Murphy is not some 27-year-old prospect. The guy is 33. He's the same age as Dan Ige. So, this is his chance. And I do think he does have a higher ceiling than Dan Ige does, but he's on a clock, man. If he doesn't win this fight and get up to a title shot, immediately, he's going to fall into the same exact gatekeeper category that Dan Ige is in right now because he just can't quite get over that hump. So chips are down, man. And when the chips are down, Dan Ige is a guy that I'm never ashamed to have money on. I don't have a bet on this fight. I've been very successful betting both for and against both these fighters for a very, very long time. And Lerone Murphy really has been my guy. I've looked for opportunities to bet on him. So in those spots, I always have a real hard time going against my guy. It seems like I can't ever time it when it's time to wave the white flag and flip sides. So instead, I just pass. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm picking Lerone Murphy to go ahead and win the fight. I think it'll be by decision because nobody's finishing Dan Ige. But I don't like the -270 price tag. Lerone Murphy by decision is another -175 chalk eating weasel type of price tag. But at the same time, you're saving $1 on the money line at -270 in this case, if that's what you want to do, because I just don't see Dan Ige getting finished by anybody, frankly. Magomed Ankalaev takes on Alexander Rakic in this fight here. 204.5 for Magomed, 206 for Alexander Rakic. Magomed always got that pudgy soft body up there. He's one of those guys. He's a Patrick Mahomes type, right? He does not look physically imposing, but that doesn't matter. He competes just fine. Alexander Rakic, on the other hand, looks like he was carved out of marble. The dude looks incredible, strong, flex when they face off. Rakic does have a slightly size advantage here, and this was intense as all get out. Rakic was glaring daggers at Magomed Ankalaev. So this is a two-parter here for me. My parlay with Oralby closes out here on Magomed Ankalaev. Now, if you guys have been watching me for any amount of time, I'm a Magomed Ankalaev hater, right? I'm not the guy who wants to beat the drum that he's the next greatest thing. In fact, I've always wanted him to fight a guy like Jamal Hill. I want to bet against Magomed Ankalaev in the right spot. And I know there's a bunch of people out there telling me that this is that spot. You should be backing Alexander Rakic this weekend, right? I'm not buying it because Alexander Rakic is mid. He's as mid as it gets. He's never won a fight where it's a step up in competition. He's never won a fight in the UFC within the contenders circle. He's only fought bums. So even though I would like to have the perfect opportunity to bet against Magomed Ankalaev. I think he's a top 3 guy. And if he's a top 3 guy, he whoops Alexander Rakic, because that's just what happens. Rakic cannot swim in the deep end of this weight class. I know he's got a size advantage. I know he's a decent wrestler. I know he's got okay power. I know he's a decent boxer. None of that matters. Magomed Ankalaev is going to win this fight on Saturday. And I am hoping he is not my Robelis to Spain this week, because I would cry if that happened to me again. But that's my spot here, man. I am just always trying to find good chances to bet against Alexander Rakic. And I know at minus 300, it doesn't sound like a great opportunity to bet against him. But again, I do think that Magomed Ankalaev just has him covered literally everywhere except for maybe the size. And it's only like an inch in height differential. I think Rakic is fragile. I think Rakic breaks. And that's something we've seen the opposite with Ankalaev, is he is not fragile and he doesn't break. So I think he can win this fight however he wants to, drag Rakic into round 2, round 3. And on top of that, the UFC have let him know he needs to be impressive in this fight if he does want to, in fact, get a crack at the 205-pound title, considering he's been Russ's chosen warrior this entire time. And they're like, go get a finish and you get a title shot. I think we see max effort Magomed Ankalaev on Saturday, and that is what I'm banking on. I kind of like Magomed Ankalaev by knockout. Plus 225. We've seen Rakic get knocked out by several of his opponents, especially recently. He's coming off back-to-back KOs, and I think his body is just kind of falling apart, frankly, unfortunately. He does have a sub-loss on his record. It's from a long time ago, and I don't think that we're going to see Magomed really looking for submissions. Like I said, you want to make a statement, you go out there, you pound a guy through the canvas. He could win by sub, but I'm expecting more of a KO than anything. So Magomed Ankalaev by KO at 2-1. I know everyone's expecting the decision because that's just him grinding, but I think they understand the challenge in front of them, and if you want a title shot, you got to get out there and get the damn thing done. Samir J888 saying, when is this event? First thing in the morning tomorrow. It's 7 a.m. my time. I'm Arizona time. So it's 10 a.m. Eastern if you want to know when this fight is. Now, Mike D, thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to mention that. The rumor is that Magomed Ankalaev has staph infection. The thing is, guys, literally every single fight these days, somebody's got staph. Like, MMA Twitter goes nuts every single week because somebody's got staph. Everybody thought that Merab had staph, and maybe he did, but Merab still went out there and whooped Sean O'Malley's ass. Like, you don't know at what stage of staph they have, if they're at the end of it and it's all healed, but like they still have like the scab on their body or whatever. It could not affect their performance whatsoever. Frankly, on this one, it's on Magomed's knees, guys. He is he's Magomedov. Like, this guy, Ankalaev is probably grappling, right? Like, I think that might just be a scab. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to play the guessing game of does he not have staph, but you got to think about it. If you've got a guy who's got a wrestling heavy game plan and he comes in with scuffed up shins and knees, shit, he might be checking leg kicks. It could be absolutely nothing. So I'm not going to look at, oh, he's got a spot on him, that's definitely staph. It looked like a scab to me, man. I don't think it's, I mean, again, it could be, but I'm not going to jump at shadows because there's a chance that he has staph when it looks like it's just a scab. All right, guys, got to wrap this bad boy up. First off, before we get to this is the home of fight. Please do me a favor and hit the like button for me if you haven't. That goes a very, very long way to supporting me and the show. And we've got a couple more fights here to talk to you about, unless I can find this stupid thing. I don't know what's going on with this damn thing. Bear with me here. Okay. Get that out of there. All right, guys, make sure you're checking out the premium plays here at Home of Fight. We do have a premium Discord. The boys are up over 90 units in 2024. And again, those are the premium plays. Those are not my plays. Promo code 308 is going to get you a 5-day free trial using the premium subscription. Please use the link in the description below for Winnable. That is how you'll get access to that. If you guys plug that in tonight, you'll get everybody's plays for UFC 308 tomorrow. Give it a test run, check it out, see how it goes. And the way the boys have been cooking this year, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Get in there and use that code 308 for a 5-day free trial. All right. Now we've got the co-main event, Hamzat Child and Rob Whittaker. 186 for Hamzat, 185.5 for Robert the Reaper Whittaker. And Hamzat Child looked absolutely destroyed on the scales today, guys. They gave him the 2-hour window, and he came in with, I think, 10 minutes left on the clock. I mean, he was just at the very, very end. They thought he was not going to make it. They talked about it the entire weigh-in show, that there were rumors that he was struggling and he wasn't going to get there. And it was a whole thing today. And he looked like he was barely there, mentally speaking. And frankly, guys, you saw the pictures of him like at the ceremonials and stuff like that. Like, let me look at this real quick. It's hard to type and talk at the same time, guys. I do apologize. But there's these pictures of Hamzat, and let me put this up here for you. Like at the freaking, instead of talking shit, he's not up there making a scene. He's like sleeping at the desk, head down. Like, I am very serious that I don't know where Hamzat is at mentally for this fight. He's fought at 170 his entire career. We talked about how, he fought Usman at 185, but that's not a real 185er that he fought in that spot. But he seems so disinterested in this fight. And so what some people like reached out to me and told me, I posted a tweet about him like losing his aura and stuff like that. I made a joke about, I'm like, guys, I'm an athlete who had a child and now has problems. So I know all about losing my aura. So I feel like I'm an expert on the subject. But apparently his kid is having like health issues. Like he's in the hospital, he's having surgeries, stuff like that. So I really didn't mean for that to come across as disrespectful. I wasn't aware of what was going on with Hamzat's kid. But so I can only imagine, kind of like Francis last weekend. I can only imagine what going through that kind of thing with a child can do to you. But what I am here to talk about is betting. And it's hard for me to talk about putting my money on somebody dealing with that. Now, Francis came through like $1 million, but let's face it, he was fighting subpar competition in the PFL. You're getting a man in Robert Whittaker, who is the former champion of this weight class, a guy who's fought the best of the best for his entire career, never said no to a fight, and has only lost to two guys that have gold wrapped around their waist. Like, that's what it takes to beat Robert Whittaker. You're asking Hamzat to go up to a weight class he's never fought at, to do something he's never done before, and then to fight the strongest level of competition he has ever had, all while he is admittedly dealing with depression, all while he is admittedly worried about his child. And I mean, like, maybe Hamzat's got the skills, right? Maybe he does. It's entirely possible. But he reminds me, going up there and talking about the admission of depression, and going up there and talking about how he's not talking about smashing everybody anymore. He's talking about how he wants to go out there and perform. If you guys remember when the Red King went over to Bellator, Rory McDonald, he went over to Bellator, and he was one of the hottest signings they could have ever possibly gotten. You're like, oh my Lord, they stole somebody from the UFC, still in their prime, someone who could be a champion. That's going to be the move for Rory McDonald, right? He's just going to murder people over there. But then he found God. And again, I've said this before, I'm a man of faith, so I'm not knocking having a religion or anything like that. But when Rory McDonald found God, and instead of talking about wanting to beat people to a pulp, and instead of talking about wanting to murder people and see them in a pool of their blood, he just wanted to glorify God in the cage. And he just wanted to go out there and have fun. And he just wanted to fight to the best of his God-given abilities. We saw him lose his edge. He completely turned into a different fighter. He started decisionating everybody. He didn't want to hurt anybody with his hands anymore. So we saw a couple of submissions towards the end of his career, but he wasn't hurting people with his hands anymore. He was doing whatever he could to not be as violent, and it was a mental shift. I am worried that Hamzat is going through a similar mental shift, or there's the chance that he's just mentally exhausted and wiped out from everything he's been through the last couple of months. It was a tough weight cut for him, even up a weight class, which is pulling the full Anthony Rumble Johnson, right? Where you move up a weight class and you still miss it because your body now is adjusted to having more in it. He had a hard time today. He's having a hard time mentally. He's not talking about Rob Whittaker, smash, I'm going to kill this guy. And he's not doing any of that. And it's the biggest step up in competition he's ever had, the best opponent he's ever faced, someone who is truly championship caliber. I got to go with Rob. I mean, Hamzat's got a slight size advantage. He's a big freaking dude. Let me tell you, when they faced off, you could tell there's still a significant size difference there. And Rob has been bum rushed in round one before. I think that, and I talked about this the last time this fight was booked, that's exactly why they booked this fight. Rob has been bum rushed by Dricus and Israel, and he's been finished in both of those fights. Now, the second chance against Izzy, that fight went much, much longer because he was prepared for it, but Dricus did the same damn thing to him. You can come out there and hurt Rob early. You can come out there and take him down and rough him up and make him lose a step, and then if he doesn't recover from that, he's in trouble. But the thing is, not everybody can do that to him. Paulo Costa tried, and he got beaten up for 15 straight minutes. He wasn't on that level. Kellen Gastelum tried. He got beaten up for 5 rounds. He wasn't on that level. I mean, that's just kind of what Jared Cannonier hurt this man in round 1, and then he got beaten up for 15 minutes. That's Rob Whittaker. So I kind of like the Rob side of things. I know it's a little bit of a square side. I know everybody and their mother is betting the dog money on Robert Whittaker, and God love him. Respect to the sharps, my guys like Yanni the Greek. He's laying it with Hamzat in this spot, and I know that this spot was put here specifically for Hamzat to succeed. But I think Rob is going to make this an extremely competitive fight. I think Rob by decision at plus 650, plus 700, whatever it's looking like right about now, is probably the way to go, because this fight is going to be competitive if Hamzat doesn't finish early. And I think live betting is also on the table, because if Hamzat comes out and just tries to ragdoll Rob but doesn't get the finish, kind of like the Kamaru Usman fight, I think that's exactly how this fight looks, is that it gets closer and closer and closer. I think rounds 1 and 2 probably go to Hamzat. Round 3 will be the swing. And then 4 and 5, it's going to be one-way traffic from Rob after you've got Hamzat gasping for air. So I think Robert Whittaker is the money line side. I think he's a good live bet. I think the over 2.5, believe it or not, is probably an okay wager here at minus 125. Hamzat's shown now that he can go 15 minutes. He's shown that he can get into the championship rounds. And especially if he's in control for those first 2 rounds and then doesn't quite death gas, it's not going to be like Rob can just flip a switch and finish him immediately. So I think we're going to get over 2.5. I kind of like that over 2.5. I might actually end up playing it. And then I'm on Rob by decision. That's going to be the looks for me here on this one. Hamzat might come in here and just complete the prophecy and run through Rob like he's nothing. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe Bobby Knuckles is going to go out that way. Main event time, guys. Ilir Topuria and Max Holloway, 145 on the dot for both guys. Shout out and tip of the cap to Diego Lopez, who weighed in at 145 as the backup fighter and looked incredible doing it. Ilir gave an absolutely massive flex. This dude is a little powerhouse. He is Georgian Ivan Drago, the way they've got this guy juiced to the freaking gills with his $1 million at-home workout, top of the line technology home base that he's got going. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. It's really kind of insane that Ilir Topuria has like his entire system set up in the back of his house for, millions of dollars, high technology level stuff. Max Holloway, no problem. He does look a little bit frazzled. This guy looks like a zombie. He could fit right in the Thriller video. On weigh-in days, he's always real sucked out and his face is always a little hollow up there. So can't blame the guy. He's tall. He's big. He's not out of place at 155. So it's a tough weight cut for him. But he looked okay. And it's never been something that's given him a problem with his performance. Holloway's got a huge size advantage here, or a height advantage at least. It was interesting with the face-off because different energies here. Holloway was just kind of in the moment. And Ilir Topuria was talking shit like the entire time. Like he was just talking to him, and Max just nodded. Like Max never said a word. He's just constantly like registering, like nodding at him. And it's really, really interesting coming into this one because neither guy could be higher right now, right? Like Ilir just got gold wrapped around his waist. He is the champion. He got vindicated on everything he's ever said. He's the best man in the world right now. And then Max Holloway, he just took the BMF title and got the most viral knockout you've ever seen. He's on a 3-fight win streak after losing his title, 2 of those coming by finish against well-known fighters and big names. I mean, Max is feeling like he's ready to go again here in this spot too. This is an extremely high-level fight. And yeah, free UFC bet picks in the chat saying that Topuria looks nervous to me, can't stop talking, can't hold eye contact. I couldn't agree more. And even like the video where they pan over to him when when Max Holloway actually knocked out Justin Gaethje and they like panned over to him right away, like he looks a little shaken up, guys. And it does seem he was pulling a bit of a Marab and trying to duck a guy that he wasn't 1,000% invested on fighting. So I said before on Monday that I'm just not in the business of betting against Max Holloway. You know, he's a guy that I want my money on. He's a guy that I want my money on when he's a big plus money underdog. I like going to war with Max Holloway. And frankly, his aura is unmatched right now. He's got Hawaii behind him. He's taking pictures with the BMF belt with the fire behind him and stuff on the beach. Like, Max is incredible right now. But I do also have newfound respect for Ilir Topuria. You know, I bet Volkanovski in the last fight because it was a show me spot. I said, I'm going to take even money on the greatest fighter of all time when you give it to me. And if you beat that man, then props to you. I'll take my hat off. Congratulations. But I have to bet Alexander Volkanovski at this price because it's something that simply never happens. It doesn't exist. Ilir went out there and he knocked out the GOAT. Now, you can get into all the stuff you want about he was, you know, withered and old and quick turnaround. He had already gotten knocked out. He didn't fight well, all that stuff. It's all true. It's all true. But Ilya still went out there and knocked out the GOAT in his home weight class. That's something people don't do. I think we're in for a much longer fight on this one. I know Ilya's talking up the whole point to the center of the cage in the first 10 seconds thing. I don't think Max is having anything to do with that. I think Max Holloway is going to do his usual dance around the cage, volume, stick and move, stay at range, keep away. I think there might be some grappling from Ilir Topuria looking to try to barrel this guy down to the ground. Frankly, guys, I think we're getting an absolute classic that goes all 25 minutes. I think we should look at the decision props. You know, Ilya by decision is plus 250. Max Holloway by decision is plus 400. Over 4.5 is plus 105. There's a chance that both these guys can finish. It's entirely possible. Max has been dropped one time his entire career, and they didn't even give Justin Gaethje the credit for that drop. So on his stats, it still says 0. This man is impossible to finish. If someone was going to finish him, it would be someone who hits like Ilya. It would be someone who squeezes like Ilya. And maybe Max can wear him out and drag him into deep waters and do what he did to Gaethje, where, you know, Ilya's just never experienced that level of pace and volume. And he's exhausted at the end of the day, and he gets hurt at the very end of the fight. Round 4, round 5, TKO. It's possible. But I kind of don't see that either. I mean, this guy has only ever been rocked by head kicks, and Max Holloway doesn't really throw those. And even when he does, he doesn't throw them with the conviction I think that it would take to knock out a guy like Topuria. I know this has got violence written all over it, but I feel like it's going to be the butt clinchiest over you've ever seen. I think it's going to be exactly like the Gaethje fight, where everybody expects one of these guys probably should have fallen over at some point, and just neither of them do. So I think it's going to be an over 4.5. I think it's going to be a decision. I think the value is on Max Holloway, and I think that I'm using that as the definition of value where the number is wrong, right? Not that the dog is the value side, because that's what everybody thinks. As in, like, Ilya should probably be like a minus 160 favorite, minus 180 favorite. I think this should be lined closer, but I do believe Ilya is deserving of being the favorite, and I think this fight goes long. That's the read, guys. That is the Undefeated post weigh-in show. I will lock in my card this evening at some point and have that posted up for you guys, because do not forget, this is an early fight AM, bright and early. Wake up, get your coffee, have your bets locked in. We're going to war first thing in the morning tomorrow in Abu Dhabi. Thank you all so much for being here. Make sure to check out the links in the description below. I've got a whole bunch of awesome cappers and tools and useful things for you guys. They're all down there in the affiliate links. And then please use promo code 308. Sign up for those free picks with the Home of Fights premium plays. And I'll get the rest of my card out for you as well this evening. Love you guys. Whoop some ass. We're winning this weekend. I can feel it. Let's roll.